This editorially independent podcast is supported by Visit Flanders.
It's the slang of the people. If you ask an Oud-Bruin in Oudenaarde, you will get the Liefmans. If you will ask Oud-Bruin in Roeselare, they will not look strange at you. They will give you a Rodenbach. If you ask it in Kortrijk, then it depends on which bar you go. You get a Bavik or a
Van der
Hinste.
So it's a language of the people.
Yeah, and that's why we use Oud-Bruin. It's Michael Jackson who separated the two beer styles.
Okay, let's buckle in. We're talking about Oud-Bruin, Flanders Red, Flemish Sours today. Roundtable discussion. My name is Brendan Kearney. You're listening to the Belgian Smart Podcast. So Oud-Bruin is a reddish-brown beer of mixed fermentation, which presents as malty, fruity, aged, and somewhat acidic. It's traditionally associated with the provinces of West Flanders and East Flanders, particularly the region around the Leestreek and the city of Oudenaarde. Now, the malt profile can range from caramel to toasted, and the acidity of commercial examples can stretch from a soft tartness to a very winey, vinous character that can be dry and tannic or balanced out with a full-bodied sweetness. Commentators commonly distinguish between foeder-aged Flanders Red and stainless steel-aged Oud-Bruin, while some breweries themselves have sought protection under different names such as Southwest Flemish Red Brown. However, these distinctions are not regularly used on the ground in Belgium. And the more you delve into production methods, the more you realise how grey the lines between all those definitions are. A few weeks ago, I sat down with three of the most influential figures in the world of Oud-Bruin. Mark Cousens is a site manager and head of production at Brouwerij Liefmans, a brewery now part of the Duvel-Moordgat Group, well known for its production of Liefmans Oud-Bruin and the now iconic Gouden Band. I asked Mark to be there to represent the Oudenaarde tradition of Oud-Bruin. Rudy Gegere is site manager at Brouwerij Rodenbach, an institution of a brewery located in Roeselare, described by others during this podcast discussion as the mothership when it comes to Oud-Bruin. I asked Rudy to be there to represent the tradition of Southwest Flanders, and in particular the process of mixed fermentation products blended from beer coming out of upright standing oak foeders. Alex Lippens is the co-owner and brewer at Brouwerij Verzet, a small brewery in Anzegem, in operation since 2011, which has embraced Oud-Bruin as part of their identity. I asked Alex to be there to represent the newer wave of brewers who are interested in protecting the heritage and reputation of Oud-Bruin in the region, but also across Belgium, and more recently, internationally. I wanted a neutral venue for the discussion, so my guests agreed to meet me in Kortrijk, in the old casino premises on the modern Casino Plain, an impressive building which is now home to one of the most beautiful bookshops in Belgium. So during our discussion, we touched on their individual journeys into Oud-Bruin, the stories of the three breweries for whom they each work, and the connection between the Oud-Bruin style and the region. We went deep on production, discussing water profiles, grain bills, mixed fermentation, and the complexities of aging. We also talked definitions. What is Oud Bruin? What's Flanders Red? Why was there an attempt to protect a different name through EU applications, and what happened that this protection was blocked? We explored the reasons Oud Bruin suffered commercial decline in the 1990s, and we surmised in what format it might survive in the future. So sit back, listen, and enjoy our Straight Talk episode about Oud Bruin. Part 1 of this discussion is called It's Old, It's Brown, It's Ours.
Okay, my name is Mark Marcusens, and I'm coming from brewery Liefmans, which now makes part of the group Duvel Moordgat. Originally, I worked for 23 years at Duvel Moordgat as head of the quality, and then I moved in 2008 when we took over Liefmans. I moved from Breendonk, Duvel, to Liefmans, to restart, in fact, the brewery, because they went bankrupt before our takeover. They went bankrupt, and then I arrived there and then started some projects. And
the rest is history.
And the rest is history, yes.
Hello, I'm Alex Lippens. I'm the co-founder of brewery Verzet, and we started in 2011.
Okay.
So my name is Rudy Hekiere. I'm from the Rodemach Brewery, working there since '82. I'm a little bit part of that history, but the history of that brewery is very old. Goes back in time till 1667. So before the Rodemach family took it over, it was the Little Spain Brewery. And they always have made beers in that way, in the way of Red Brown's Old Brown beer, aging on wood.
And it's located in Spanjestraat now, I think.
It's located in the Spanjestraat, and that was the ancient Spain, Spanjeweek, so the
neighborhood.
The neighborhood of Spain. It was a Spain neighborhood.
Okay.
So you have to go back in time to the Austrians to know what happens there.
We're all sharing a beer here today. It's a beer from Verzet. Could you tell us a little bit about what the beer is, Alex?
So it's one of our infusions. It's our the base beer is our regular Oud Bruin, and we infused it with oak leaves. So we and each September since 2013 we go pick with a group of people oak leaves in a local forest. Dry those leaves for 2 weeks, and then put them for 5 months on beer that's already aged for 1 year in the barrel.
I can understand, if you have a traditional product, you want to think of ways that you can inject your own personality into it, or maybe try something new. But how do you come up with the idea of oak leaf? And I mean, it sounds like the fact that you have to dry them first and work with them in a way that it actually there's some obstacles to using it.
I've got the idea from a hippie book from my girlfriend. She's like into permaculture, growing all kinds of stuff in the garden next to each other. And in that book, making juices from berries. There was like a recipe of oak leaf wine. My inspiration button is always on, so it intrigued me, and I said, why don't we try it like in Oud-Bruin? The circle would be round. We're using oak barrels. Why don't we add like oak leaves and try to see what's happening? And also thinking the big boys here next to me will never do that experiment. So it's a unicum that we can make, and if it's good, then we have something unique. And
what, like, for people that maybe haven't had the opportunity to try it, how would you describe what the oak leaf infusion sort of equips the beer with or endows the beer with extra?
It's an earthy flavor. It gives an extra dimension to the beer. And you have like some people say it's like smelling and tasting like a walk in the forest in autumn. It's a unique flavor that you don't get by adding something else.
No, but I think you're right when you say like it's more difficult for the big boys sitting on either side of you here, because like they operate in a different commercial environment to a brewery of your size. You don't just produce Oud-Bruin, of course, you also produce top fermented beers, but how big a part of Oud-Bruin production, how big a part of your identity is that as a brewery?
As a volume, it's only 20%, but as our identity, it's 80%.
Why so?
Because it's a beer of our region, and when we started the brewery, we want to make Oud-Bruin rock and roll again. It's not very popular the last 10 years, and we want to like add new energy to the beer style by being a young brewery. Choosing for that style, it's not an easy choice. It's not the most convenient one, but we truly love the beer style.
So, I mean, the name of the brewery is Te Verzet, which translates as the resistance. And you just talked about like rock and roll. There's kind of this, pushing back vibe, initially anyway, to the brewery when it was set up. How do you think the other brewers perceived you guys when you came in to do that? Like, there was no disrespect on your part?
No.
You're the resistance to the establishment, right?
I think they're just watching what are they gonna do. We were not like approached. I think they thought, let's see what's happening with them. They're not scared of us. We have to prove ourselves. If what we do is an added value to the Belgian beer scene, and that's what we want to be, an added value, not only kicking on knees of other guys. We want to just push boundaries and get Belgian beer relevant still.
Yeah. Mark, you mentioned that you were working for Duvel Moortgat before they bought Liefmans, right? So does that mean that you were in production of a strong golden ale?
Yes.
Mostly, like most of the time?
Yeah.
And can you remember the moment when someone comes to you and says, right, we want you to go to Liefmans and brew this beer of mixed fermentation with heritage?
Yeah, at that moment, I was not really thinking about what it would gonna be. I knew the beers a little bit, but not really from regular tasting and whatever, because they seemed different as what I was used to make. But I knew Oud-Bruin from my studies. I went to college in Oudenaarde a few years. So there I drank a lot of Oud-Bruin at that time in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. So I still had an idea of Oud-Bruin, but especially for our Oud-Bruin from Oudenaarde, Liefmans and Felix. I tasted it. So I had an idea of how it was at that time.
But what year was that the Leafmans takeover?
In 2008, where I'm talking about when I regularly drank Oud Bruin was from the period when I was in school and when I was 17.